Hey guys, Moon Elf again. Like many of you, I've spent a lot of my time playing World of Warcraft Classic since its launch in August 2019. And now that we're nearing the first Classic expansion, the Burning Crusade, I thought it would be interesting to review the current state of the game at the end of Phase 6. I don't know what it is, but before each Blizzard expansion launches, it feels a lot like that last day in high school, where you're saying goodbye to friends and a little scared about what the future holds. While I will briefly at some point go over the other phases, I'm not here to reflect on anything other than the current phase, so that when Classic World of Warcraft launches in 2050, I'll remember what to expect. Overall, I've really enjoyed the game, and I've played since the launch. I've missed only a handful of weeks raiding, and have gone through the PvP ranking system. I've been in hardcore speedrunning guilds and casual guilds. I've also witnessed guilds get server first, as well as fall apart. For example, when a guild disbanded after the GM prioritized Thunderfury to his ult, or when a Ret Paladin GM left the guild and ninja'd all of the gold from the guild bank ult to be distributed to his friends. I've seen almost everything. And all of these things have led to this moment in World of Warcraft Classic. I want to answer the question, how is it right now for a freshly rerolled character as well as for a veteran old boy character in Phase 6? Just as some background information, my hunter is in a speedrunning guild on a PvP server, and I have a freshly rerolled warlock on a PvE server. Anyway, both of these characters have given me quite a unique and interesting perspective on the current state of Classic World of Warcraft in late Phase 6 and before the release of the Burning Crusade. I remember in early and middle Phase 5, guilds were having huge problems recruiting. There was always some discussion between the officers on how long they have been spamming trade chat for new people. While we never had to raid with less than 40 players, it was at times a close call. There were just not that many players changing guilds. Now it's insanely difficult to find a decent guild as a new player to a server. Last week my warlock was looking for a guild on a high population realm and I couldn't find anything. Zero. You probably had a better chance matching on Tinder in rural Alabama than finding a decent guild with a raid spot. It's obvious that this is mostly due to the influx of people returning to the game, as well as people re-rolling Warlock and Hunter in preparation for the Burning Crusade, combined with some of the legacy guilds calling it quits due to the cost of raiding and Nax and to save their IRL world buffs before the release of the Classic expansion. We had 3 or 4 of the major raiding guilds hang up their hats a few weeks after the release of Nax. And with the guilds, most of these high-level players decided to take a break as well. It's hard to go into the mentality of exactly why those guilds quit, but I'm sure it mostly has to do with burnout. The mentality of raiding the same raid over and over again just for your gear to be replaced a few months from now is demoralizing, which probably says a thing or two about why raiding in retail World of Warcraft feels a bit empty. It's been interesting to see how many people have been slowly leaving the guild before the launch of TBC. It hasn't been a significant number of people. People who are still raiding Nax will probably be here until the end. If that's because they still need some final pieces of loot, or if it's because they just are enjoying the game and the people around them, I'm not sure. But for the ones that have left, their replacements have been interesting, to say the least. It's not like the replacements have been bad people, but the skill ceilings have been creeping up in the game slowly in the more serious guilds. And those players who are returning to the game just aren't quite, it's hard to say, but just quite aren't good enough. But in this min-max culture, it's really difficult to take a break and expect just to come back and speedrun again. It's a bit like riding a bike, but instead of coming back to a bike, you have a motorcycle in front of you. I'm not saying that the game is so incredibly difficult because you're clicking 2 buttons, but things do progress slowly. People do slowly get better at games. So if I can't find a guild to raid with as a new rerolled character, and it's hard to find a pug, and it is fucking hard to find a pug raid past MCBWL, if you don't know people or have a reputation on the server, then what are you left with? Holy shit, man. Where did all these GDKPs come from? That word is very hard to say, so I'm going to be saying gold runs from now on. It seems like there are more gold runs than soft reserve runs in Phase 6. I don't remember gold runs being this prevalent in the other phases. I know it was almost non-existent in the earlier phases, which makes me think about gold inflation and ask if it's getting a bit out of control. Because according to the database, prices are falling for consumables, but so are volumes of consumables being put on the auction house. Then again, all of these gold runs seem to be a clear indicator. Think about it. Spenders are buying thousands of gold from gold sellers, and then that wealth is redistributed in a gold printing economy. Just yesterday, I was watching a YouTube video where Gressel sold for 40,000 gold, which is worth $720 today. That's insane to me. I don't think there's anything wrong with GDKPs within itself, but it's become all-consuming on the servers that I'm in, where people are even doing GDKP ZG runs. It's all a bit too much for my liking, personally. I mean, why do a GDKP and spend those thousands of IRL dollars on gear when I can just join a guild or soft reserve the gear I want? Then again, I understand how gold runs would be the purest form of time investment, where basically farming gold equals loot. But that's not the case with all the gold buying and the shadowy underbelly of pumpers and spenders. With all this said though, I would prefer if we slow down with all the GDKP runs and return to the time and effort raiding equals gear and not G2G equals gear. While we're on the topic of raiding, world buff pops are becoming less frequent, and I think it's quite obvious why. I mean, there are just less people who are able to pop the one-time buffs. It's really surprised me that it's lasted this long. It's sometimes hard to remember that each person popping a heart or head is probably a fresh level 60. Which makes me think, if I was going to start a level 1 character today, at the end of phase 6, what would I encounter? How would things look? It really surprised me when I did reroll and start over. I was expecting the leveling zones to be more or less barren. Basically a nuclear fallout sort situation, similar to how leveling is in retail today. After some time, you expect a mature MMO's leveling scene to be dead, right? Well, the resilience of Classic WoW leveling scene has been shocking to me. Yes, people can still boost, and there are a lot of boosts, but also leveling is still very much alive at the end of Classic. Ranking is nowhere near as important or as active as it was in the earlier phases, and some could say ranking's dead. Bracket caps have been reduced so much that if you mouth breathe too hard, you could break them. More or less having to do with the irrelevance of rank 14 gear for most classes or the marginal nature of the upgrade. But overall, people are still PvPing for fun. I remember in the earlier days of World of Warcraft, you had two kinds of PvP groups. The people who did Battlegrounds and the people who did Arena. There just seems to be that demographic of person who loves to queue BGs, and these same people who are in BGs all day are still there in phase 6, which is cool. To each their own, you know. Also, World PvP is just as good as it used to be. Maybe even more toxic than it used to be, where the world buff griefing is still going strong. Also though, at the same time, the routine of getting world buffs is so ingrained in my muscle memory that losing them isn't such a big deal anymore. Overall, phase 6 is still quite a lot of fun, regardless of its weaknesses, stale PvP, and the halt of any new raid content for veteran characters. Where raiding Nax every week feels a lot like an on-rails muscle memory activity, but its strengths shine, as a fresh level 1 or level 60 feels better than ever. We just have so much raid content to clear, and all of it is relevant to our character's progression. And it's hard to imagine a time where we just had MC to clear once we reached level 60. The economy isn't the best, I mean, let's admit it, but this game is 17 years old, and the community is holding up better than its more current relative, where you realize that World of Warcraft Classic is one of those Hall of Fame franchises, and very similar to playing through the Uncharted series or Dark Souls series. It's old as shit, and there are weaknesses and bugs all over the place, but goddamn, the game is good. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks so much for listening. I feel like I kind of made this video more for myself, but if you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you guys liked and subscribed. And thanks so much for watching. Hopefully see you again soon.